Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new video on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Spencer, host of Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only, two podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. This is Wednesday Night Warrior, a weekly YouTube series where I talk about whatever I want in Magic. It's actually really fun for me. It takes me away from Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only, where we specifically talk about things that make you better at Magic. We do that on this show sometimes, but for me, this is like a chance for me to give opinions and kind of separate myself from the task of helping people, which sounds weird because I hope that this helps you, but it's kind of a little bit different enough that I really enjoy doing these videos. So I really appreciate all the viewers that we get on these, whether you're from Pure MTGO or you're here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. So let's start with our topic this week. So this week, I want to talk about why why we hate the best deck. So I think that Standard is in the most interesting place it's been in a long time. And I don't mean interesting in the fact that, like, it's super fun, everybody loves it. I mean, it's actually interesting what's happened. So, for those who are not playing Standard right now, Standard is in a place where there are many different versions of a deck that have a similar mechanic. So, the mechanic is called Energy. So Energy is a resource that you can use to gain benefits throughout a game through different cards. And you get energy counters. So we have the best deck, which is Temur Energy. This is paired with Temur Black, which is a Temur deck that splashes black for the Scarab God, as well as some sideboard cards pretty often. Then you have different other energy decks. You have different pummeler decks. So this could be green-red pummeler, rug pummeler, blue-green pummeler, or Sultai pummeler. You have snake decks. So this is green, black, and Sultai. And then you have four-color energy. And this is just basically a mash of Sultai and Temur together. It's Sultai Red is what a lot of people call it, but it very much is a mid-range deck trying to abuse the energy mechanic and gain the most advantage through it. Or actually not even a mid-range deck, it's actually probably a control deck with some mid-range cards in it. It's like a mid-rangey control, like it's on the control side of mid-range. So you have Temur, Sultai, Pummeler, and four-color. And to be honest, in the past, you've also had Jund, which is an aggressive deck, and just straight green-red energy. So, through all of this mechanic, if you include those two decks, plus these decks, plus you have, the Aetherworks Marvel-style decks, there's been seven different decks to try and use energy. Right now, the ones you have to worry about are those first four that we talked about, but we clearly have a mechanic. With that mechanic, we have a best deck, and that's Temur Energy. So, what constitutes a best deck? I think constitutes a best deck is the deck that is by the masses considered the deck to beat. And Temur Energy is very much that deck. This is a Glorybringer deck, this is a Bristling Hydra deck, and it is a deck that is very much a Jundish style deck. So if you played back in the day, you might have played with Blood-Red Elf and a Jund deck. Or you might have played the Huntmaster of Fel's Farseek deck. Those were both Jund decks, meaning that they were green, red, black, but they were mid-range decks that tried to abuse the middle of the game, control the aggro decks, attack the control decks, and they lived in formats with very little combo decks. And Temur Energy is very much like that. It is a mid-range deck that tries to be aggressive against the control decks, the control deck against the aggro decks, and live in that middle space. However, one thing that has happened in this standard format is people are lumping all four of these archetypes, these very different decks together as energy decks, right? Somebody sees a Sultai Pummeler deck, they're like, oh, that's just Sultai Energy. And that's not true. While they all have the energy mechanic, it's actually not the same deck. So, what's happened here is Temur Energy is very good. It is the best deck in Standard. It's the best deck because it has the least bad matchups. It's the deck to beat. But for some reason, the fact that all of these share mechanic and energy, people really don't like it. People viscerally hate it. They have a real hate for the fact that so many decks share a key mechanic. And to be honest, in my time playing Magic, the only other time that I can think of a deck sharing a mechanic is Devotion. And Devotion didn't feel like the same deck. Now, the difference here is all of these decks share Attune with Ether. Attune with Ether is very key in these. Now, you could say that the Grixis deck from the First Strike Nation is also an energy deck that doesn't play Attune with Ether. That's not on my list here, but it is in fact a deck that doesn't play Attune with Ether. But people really don't like the fact that Attune with Ether, there are so many Attune with Ether decks. And there's a few reasons that I don't like this. For one, losing to the same card again and again isn't fun. In fact, losing isn't fun. Losing matches of Magic the Gathering is probably the worst part of Magic the Gathering, right? And we don't like the feeling of feeling helpless in a match of Magic the Gathering. So, when you are trying to attack the best deck, in this case Temur Energy, and you're not successful in it, and no matter what you try, you keep losing, it doesn't feel fun, right? Because you're like, well, what can I do? I can do nothing. I don't think that Temur Energy is in that place. I don't think that the hatred that people feel towards Standard right now is because they can't beat Temur, because I think that Temur is beatable. I think that basically all the energy decks are beatable. I think that the problem here is that people feel similar feelings every time they see that Attune with Ether. And these feelings carry over from the time of Aetherworks Marvel, which, by the way, also wasn't oppressive. That deck was also beatable. But it's just, it is a dominant mechanic. And obviously it's a dominant mechanic, right? It is introducing a new linear, not even linear, it's a new mechanic that has an entire thing focused around it, right? So when you think about something like Metalcraft, these decks aren't Metalcraft decks, right? They're artifact decks. When you think of Devotion decks, they're not all devoted to Attune with Ether, right? They're all devoted to a certain color, right? So a blue Devotion deck would play out very differently than a black Devotion deck, or a green Devotion deck, or a red Devotion deck, which we had all of, right? And I think that it is frustrating for players because they're starting to feel, I'm just so sick of people adjusting their energy counter, is what they're really feeling. But I don't think that this standard is bad. It's just weird that we're playing in so many decks playing one of the same card. I think that back in the day, by the way, swear warning, I'm about to swear, there was a podcast that I think just came back called Yo MTG Taps. And one of the things that Yo MTG Taps brought to me as a new Magic player was the idea of stop bitching, start brewing. And what they're saying is, just because there's a best deck doesn't mean it's time to just call it off. There's a best deck, nobody can beat it. It's like, stop complaining that there's a best deck and do what you can to be part of the hive mind to beat it. There are things that you can do to attack energy, right? You can get under it, you can get over it with things like Approach of the Second Sons for game 1s. Now, your game 2s and 3s are a little bit rough because they get negate, but that doesn't mean that there isn't anything that you can do, right? There's the Jund ramp deck, right? The Enchantment ramp deck, or the Wrath ramp deck, as I like to call it, that plays Hour of Promise, that just annihilates Temur Energy. And if you want to just beat Temur Energy, you can do that. And the thing is that Mono Red is keeping a balance in this format, right? This is actually not an energy deck, but Mono Red keeps a balance where it says, okay, you can try to attack Temur Energy, but the second that you go too far to do that, I'm going to come in underneath you and beat you. That's actually good for Magic. That's actually the reason that no matter who you talk to, they say, Standard is healthy. It's a lot of energy, but it's healthy. And that's because there is real archetypes, right? You have your mid-range decks and the energy decks, a lot of them. You have your aggro deck in Mono Red, and you have your control deck in Approach or Blue-Black or whatever people are doing that week. And you even have combo decks in the form of Gift or in the form of Pummeler. There is so much going on in this standard, yet people are still burned out. And I think that what happens is it doesn't matter what the best deck is. People are going to be burned out by the best deck. There have been so many best decks in my time playing Magic, and there have been oppressive ones. If you look at green-white tokens in its heyday, until the next set came out, green-white tokens was actually oppressive. In our power rankings, the way that we do unconstructed criticism, 6 points for first, 5 points for second, 4 for top 8, 4 for top 4, 3 for top 8, 2 for top 32, 1 for top 64. The most impressive decks in the last 4 years according to those rankings, is green-white tokens during its heyday by a huge, huge margin. It's more impressive than even the Siege Rhino Abs Index. But people love that format. Why do they love it? I don't know. But what I'm saying is that we have this visceral hate for whatever the best deck is. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's mono red, people hate it. It doesn't matter if it's mid-range, people hate it. It doesn't matter if it's control, it's Fingers of Revelation, people hate it. It doesn't matter if it's combo, people hate it. Aetherworks Marvel. It doesn't matter. People don't like feeling helpless. They don't like feeling like the thing that I'm doing doesn't beat the thing that you're doing. And the time that people do like it is when the deck that they love is the best deck. And I think that what we need to get over is this feeling of, well, let's just ban it. I don't want to spend the time to beat it. I don't want to think about it. I just want to play Magic the way that I like to play Magic and win, because winning's more fun than losing. What we need to do is say, okay, can I do the thing that I like to do in a different way to try and beat this best deck? Because I think that in the end, we'll be happier that way. And the resolution of banning cards, the number of people that I've seen ban a Tomb with Ether, I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. Banning a Tomb with Ether would be crazy. It would be crazy. It's a lay of the land. And now it is a lay of the land that has a lot of utility in decks with energy. But that's why they printed the card. I think that if there's anything that I've learned from this hatred of the best deck, it's that everybody feels this way. Nobody likes feeling helpless. But if you look at, just take me as an example. Whether it's Green Red Ramp qualifying Casey for a Pro Tour, getting me multiple Pro points in a format that people didn't believe it was possible, right? I think that if you look at tons of brewers, there are tons of brewers out there that are way better than me that attack the best deck. And they're going to have their weeks. They're going to have their good weeks and their bad weeks. But it's never impossible. And when it is, that's when bannings are appropriate, right? Once Battle School is coming down on turn 3 and that you can't stop it at a reasonable amount of the time, yeah, it's time to ban Stoneforge Mystic. But Smuggler's Copter, guys, we can't just ban everything that we don't want to deal with. We have to innovate, do the things that we can. So I hope that next time there's a best deck that's not Temur Energy, rather than just hating it and bashing Magic for having a best deck, we can say, okay, there's a best deck, how do I beat it? So that's it for this week, guys. That's Wednesday Night Warrior. Don't forget to check out Patreon at patreon.com/He'sAGameMedia. That's to support me directly. You can also check out the Patreons for all of our shows. Limit Time Only has one. Constructive Criticism has one. Common Knowledge has one. I appreciate the support. I hope that you enjoyed this video. We'll see you guys all next week with another Wednesday Night Warrior.